Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hi, Antoinette. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Welcome to another edition of Nurturing Our Roots. And we just want to welcome everybody who's joining us this afternoon. We have so much to share, but I just want to say something before we get into it. Karen, it looked like everything was trying to be condensed in 1 month, 28 days, but I'm black next month. We don't have to squeeze everything into this 1 month because we have a lot to share. But tonight we want to talk to you about the importance of genealogy and why research your family history. So I know I have many reasons I want to research my family history, and I'm more than sure you do, Karen, as well. But self knowledge of self is the most important reason for me. Wanting to know who I am, who do I connect to, where did my family come from, and I want to go back as far as I possibly could. So we just want to break down to you why genealogy is important. And if you join us in the chat room, please let us know. Do you think that genealogy is important? First, let me just say that genealogy is not a hobby. It is a necessity. It is who you are. Karen, your points of view on genealogy?
Absolutely. It is a necessity. I know that when I got into it, I wanted to know more about me. And there were fewer people alive who can tell me anything about our ancestors. So I had to use genealogy. And more and more, I have people coming to me because they know that I do a lot with DNA, wanting me to help them find their fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go forward in history, that's going to get to be more and more difficult because people don't live in family groups like they used to, where we could find people on census records in family groups. And
So
in
true.
some cases, I have had many situations where um, mothers just refuse to tell children, adult children, who their fathers were, and they have to rely on DNA. Also, as being descendants of enslaved people, sometimes our ancestors didn't have any say in what happened to their children. And so, in order to find some
Mm-hmm.
of our ancestors, DNA is becoming more and more useful as we learn to use tools that until now hadn't really been available to us. We're able to break that stuff down now, chromosome by chromosome, and really find our people. So, um, for me, it's really exciting where we go from here in researching our family history.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out because I know when I started researching my family history 30 plus years, I knew that DNA was available, but not like we see it utilized today. So there's been a lot of activity this month, and I always say that history starts local. History to me is my genealogy, your genealogy, uh, your story, my story, our story, their story. And so I always, every opportunity I get, I like to focus on my family history, which is a part of the community. It's very important that we study our family history for so many, many reasons. And I do want to point out the health benefits of knowing your family history, especially if your family was homeowners or something like that, and you have to open up a succession. The first thing they want to know is there any other heirs that we need to know about. And so that's why it's very important.
Absolutely. And then just as you said, history is local, and especially in some of our smaller communities, you may have always gone to a particular place in the country. Come to find out, your ancestors own even more land than you're finding. Uh,
Yes,
you know, and I think we owned more land as Black people. We own more land back in the early 1900s, late
exactly.
1800s than we do
Mhm.
today.
Exactly.
And
And so what we need to be doing is looking at what we need to study and go back and study how are we losing that land. We know that a large amount of land was taken from our ancestors, but I think due to neglect that we are not really conducting family business as we should. We are not researching in the courthouse, looking at the legal descriptions of the property, and sometimes not realizing or knowing where that property is located, because these conversations are not what we're holding inside of our homes.
another reason is knowing our part in history. Here we are in the deep South in Louisiana, and during Reconstruction, there were many African Americans running things. And I would just challenge everybody to go and check your research your family history, but
Mhm,
especially pay attention to what your people were doing, let's say between 1870 census up to the 1900 census. Find out what were they doing, not just their names on a census record, but
mhm.
search newspapers for them. I use newspapers.com a lot, and the articles that I have found about what Black people were doing in the 1870s is absolutely fascinating. We
Yes.
are a part of the history of this
Mhm,
state.
mhm. And we must always remember that it's your narrative, it's your story, and no one is going to tell your story, and no one is obligated to tell your story. And we need to stop waiting for other people to write us into the history books, or tell our stories through films, through virtual Zoom, or whatever it is. It's your narrative, and so it we owe it not only to our ancestors, to ourselves, but the children. They need to know their family history. They need to know, where did they come from? What did we own? And like you said, I was able to look at our Harrell branch of the family history from 1866. I want you, and Karen, that was very a very important document, because I wanted to know about their life. And like you said, when they look at the census, analyze that census, go to the top if you have to get a magnifying glass. And now there's a different way to look at it, but look at, did they own their property? How many people was in the house? Could they read? Could they write? What was the value of that home or the property that they owned?
Absolutely. And then once you find out that they did own property, see that record leads you to another record. Then you can go to the
Exactly.
courthouse and hopefully go into the courthouse and find the property records.
And Karen mentioned, since you're talking about that, I want to go into a PowerPoint that I put together. And the reason I want to share that is because everybody needs to know what it looks like when we go into the courthouse. So let me just share this right quick. History starts local. Genealogy and history, it starts with your own family. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that it starts with your own family. Um, we was in the St. Helena courthouse, and I want you to see that. As you can see, we had to utilize the magnifying glasses because the records are so old. I think these records here, Karen, dated back to the 1800s. Like, I think it was 1838, and
Mm.
that was very important. And we need to really advise people where to look at in the clerk's office when you're researching your family history. St. Helena Parish Clerk's Office, mortgage and conveyance records are now available online from 1983 to present. That's a big celebration there, Karen, to get those records to be online in St. Helena. And I'm very happy to see that, because as we're looking at all these tornadoes, we're looking at a change in weather, and at any given time, we can be vulnerable to losing these records. So when you go in that clerk's office, I would definitely say to people, look, dig, research, ask questions, because it's all important. And Karen, I want to point out too that I was very happy to speak to Mr. Kip Andrews' class at Hammond Magnus High Magnet School in Hammond, Louisiana. And what he had his students to do is to look at the local churches, research the oldest African American churches in the Hammond area, and they was very happy to find some significant findings. Um, Once again, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to pass this down to the students to get them to start looking at history on a local level. That's very important. I was very pleased with that. Um, Back to local history again. Bernice Alexander Bennett, the author of Black Homesteaders of the South, she spoke, and I was very happy to see that she presented a presentation at the Louisiana State Archives. And this is local history. We when we think about who was those ancestors that resist, and resist doesn't always mean, Karen, a big fight. It can just mean just owning your own land, defining what freedom is to you. And that's what we want to convey to a lot of the young people, that they stand on the shoulders of some very powerful people. And once again, I want to speak about the bookshelves at the Louisiana State Archives. We're now adding our history into the Louisiana State Archives. So I was very happy with that. Um, Karen, I want to share this. This is very important. Please look at this picture. This is a picture from, and I want to make that larger there. If I could, give me 1 minute. This is a picture of the cemetery at Rocky Hill Church in St. Helena, Louisiana. Now, if you look at this, Karen, this is this is really, really terrible. A tree that was in the graveyard blew down during Hurricane Ida, and as you can see, it knocked over the headstone of Willie Richardson. It left a very large hole in some of the vaults. And so, what it taught me, Karen, is that we must be careful about trees in the cemetery. What's your thoughts on that, Karen?
Well, absolutely, because they can be a hazard. Trees sometimes don't last 200 years. And if they start, not only if they start to come down, depending on what kind of tree, the roots can damage grave sites.
Yes.
A tornado can, a hurricane can bring them down, but the roots can be just as damaging.
And that's exactly what we see if you look at the roots that was growing inside this vault here. So I think as we study genealogy a little bit deeper, we should realize now, what can we learn from these catastrophes, these natural disasters that took place. And I would think that one of the things that we should look at is eliminating any trees that's close to the headstones and the vaults, because some of these headstones, Karen, dates back to like the 1800s. So there's a piece of history that will be lost if, one, if the headstones are not replaced, two, the vaults are not replaced or restored, then that can become an empty spot. You know it was a grave there, but now you have no identification. And most of the churches may not hold records of every individual that's buried there.
Yes, there are many cemeteries, unless somebody more recently in recent history has gone through and made records of some of these cemeteries, you won't know who.
Right. You will not know. Now, this is in Big Zion Cemetery in Roseland, Louisiana, where our ancestors was buried. And as you do know, that our enslaved ancestor Robert Harrell, who was born in 1821 and passed away in 1921, his headstone is one of the headstones that's lying on the ground.
Mm, mm, mm.
So I did contact everybody on our private family page and asked them if they would be willing to volunteer some time to maintain those headstones and the vaults there, because that's a significant amount of history that would be lost in our family if it's not done. And I was happy just to go out there. I go out there every spring, but I hadn't been out there in 2 years. So
Mhm.
this is the condition in which I found it in. So I'm hoping that we all can gather to do something about it. And I do want to share with you, Karen, that I was invited to speak for be the keynote speaker for Black History Month with by HP, and I talked about slavery after the emancipation. So that was a very good topic for me to talk about. Um, and also this month, I spoke at the East Ivoryville Library in St. Gabriel, Louisiana, on the same topic. Last but not least, I want to say that this coming Saturday on WGNO, we will be talking about genealogy, and as you can see, the Richardson family, there's learning and researching their family history too. So there was a lot going on this month, and I'm very grateful that I'm done with that for right now. Anything that you want to share about some of the things that you're working on?
Well, I will say, and I don't have a flyer to share right now, but there's going to be a Zoom session coming up on February 28th. I'm part of a panel on Black genealogy and
Mm-hmm.
reparative justice, honoring
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors, restoring our families. And I'll put a link to that in the chat so that folks, but it's from 6 to 8 p.m. and it's going to be on Zoom, and I'll be able to post it on our social media. But that's Tuesday, February 28th, 6 to 8 p.m. And that is through the something called the Braxton Institute,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dialogues on Resisting and Thriving. And I'll be with some of the descendants of Jesuit enslavement, who most of these folks are they live in Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just talking about um, uh, what does our reparative justice look like? Because as you know, many universities are beginning to acknowledge that slave labor, that they owe their existence to slave labor, and they but the way they're doing it, they control the narrative, and they want to determine what reparative justice or reconciliation look like, and in my opinion, they don't get to control that.
Exactly. I mean, it's your narrative. And the question I would like to ask, are you all writing a journal or a book or something? I know you all have been meeting for years and years, but what is coming out of your meetings? I know you're meeting a lot of new relatives. Is there any documentaries, any books on the way, any journals, anything you want to share with
There
us?
there are a couple of books that some people have are working on. There's a documentary that I worked on that will soon be coming out.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other things in the works. There are various projects. You know, there are so many descendants of Jesuit enslavement, and so there are so many perspectives that people are choosing to tell their stories. So there's a lot, including people reconnecting with family. What we do every Thursday night is when as people figure out their DNA matches to people who are a part of this history, we do what we can to try to help them figure out how they connect, if they're connecting on that line that was enslaved by the Jesuits. And that's ongoing work, and we hope to expand that to some bigger DNA research projects. That's what my personal interest is, in addition to just meeting so many of the family members. So there's all of that is going on. Different people are doing different things.
Yeah, it's good to hear that. I want to share something that's Let me just share this a minute. See if I can bring this on. Okay, let's try something different. Okay, I was really happy to see at the end of there has to be a goal for me with everything that I'm doing with the research, because I often talk about what happens when you can't no longer do the research. You know, you have all these years and years and decades of research, and what do you do with that? So I was happy to see that the book is now on a shelf in Walgreens, CVS, all the stores that carry the book. And so that was a very good ending for the research in a certain area. Am I thinking about publishing another book? Yes, because I had a lot of photographs left over. And so I don't want those photographs just to be here, because I have witnessed too many times where people pass away, and when they pass away, their research material is either lost, it wasn't put in the will that they wanted the material to go to what a university, a library, or nowhere. So I think we need to really think about what is going to happen to the material. So that was something that I'm very proud of, that took place this month as well, just to see the book being received in different places. So um, it's not a loss, you know. If something happened, it's not a loss,
Right.
because you was talking about the importance of community genealogy. Well, that is community genealogy that would be forever lost if we don't look at writing books, writing journals. um, the young people, they are good at TikTok. They can tell their ancestor stories through 2 and 3 minute TikTok videos, because that's what young people do, you know. And so when they, like what's happening in Florida right now with everyone talking about, critical race theory, they don't want this taught, they don't want that taught. But you know what? There's too many venues for us to use these days to not tell the story, and not tell our own story, not own our own story, but I just want to interject that, because it crossed my mind about what should we do once we find all of this information and share it.
Well, I think especially now that some people seem threatened by African American history, that they want to ban it and all of that, I
Hmm.
think that will naturally push into even more expansive ways of sharing that history using alternative means.
Yes.
So, what they mean for bad may actually be pushing people into being more creative and even
Yes.
having even further outreach, because there are so many ways that uh, our history can be shared. And I know I saw an older teacher just bringing young people out into the community and showing them places around their community where Black history took place. And who knows, he might not have made it to the news had that situation not come about. So now even more
Exactly.
people know
Exactly.
about him.
Mhm. and
Because
and so we have to really not focus on what others are not doing or will do, as much as we should be focused on what are we going to do. You said earlier, during the years of Reconstruction, how we was building and what we was doing. And so, as far as I'm concerned, we're still in Reconstruction. They may have put a limit on it in their time, but we're still reconstructing our history. We're still trying to locate family members that was sold on the auction blocks during slavery, never to be seen again. And so we're still searching for those missing pieces of the puzzle. So this is reconstruction. And I personally feel that uh, as we discuss reparations every day, that genealogy should be part of the repairing of families, because that's the number one thing that most of us want, is to find family members. That's what when slavery was emancipated, you have read somewhere, I have read many places, where women and men walk for miles and miles and miles in search of their children, husbands, wives, parents. And to this day, we're still doing the same thing. And
Absolutely.
like you said earlier, DNA is the one thing that is connected when we can't find, documentation or any other evidence that would connect us.
I've seen so many success stories.
Yes.
It's almost like when people are looking for their adoptive parents, only they weren't adopted out, they just didn't happen to know, or they may have been told that this was their mother, come to find out it's really their older sister, or something like that, like they were raised by grandparents or something, and then it's not until they become an adult that they find out the truth. And I've just seen people reconnect with other family members through DNA, and it's just been so beautiful. It almost brings tears to my eyes, because it's one thing to know that you're adopted, but it's another thing to be told, oh, well, I don't know who your dad is. Yeah, and then you're searching for your dad, and now there are ways that people can find who their biological family is, and it's just
And
beautiful
I
when
want
it works out.
to, I really want to point out that, wow, genealogy is beautiful. It can be very painful when you discover information that you did not know or you wasn't told the truth. But the first thing I would say to anyone when you come across a situation like that is, do not be judgmental, because we don't know the circumstances surrounding things. And so, we're just trying to connect those pieces, and we have to feel comfortable enough to find a way, a medium to process it, because it is painful sometimes.
Hmm.
And if that means just, I mean, there's things that I have uncovered in genealogy, not that it pertains to me, but to other families. It was so painful that we all had to cry together. So there is a process through this, because our search for knowledge of self due to slavery can be very complex. It's very, very complex. It can be very dark. It
Well, let
can
me just
be
say
very
this,
painful.
because I do come across this so much. I tell people uh, to go into this, as you said, non-judgmental, but giving a lot of grace,
Yes.
because you don't know what the circumstances were that created this situation, and you may never know what the circumstances were, and so the people you grew up with, knowing, being told that's your family, they're still your family. It's just that you're not biologically related to them, but that's still your family. And any new people you find, those are people you can choose to be family with now, because it's your choice. You could just know the information and keep moving on, or you can reach out. And I just consider that to be bonus family. But you don't throw away the people who were there before. I always say this is about addition, not subtraction. Um, and so, uh, even and when someone does a DNA test, I now, because I know better, I now tell them, are you sure you want to uh, do this? Because sometimes you can find out information that you didn't intend to find out, that no one intended to surface, and almost everybody says, yeah, I'm going to go for it anyway. I said, well, just be ready. If you find something out, be prepared for how you're going to deal with it.
And that's very good to take a disclaimer with that because um, when I spoke with HP before them last week, there was counseling offered to the people because my subjects are very hard, and in genealogy, you're either going to be true to self or you're going to live in this delusional world. But to be truthful, um, as we research our family history, we need to be able to say that through sessions like this one, because everybody's so happy that you're finding photographs and you're meeting new people, you're traveling new places, exploring new family members. But there's always a side. There's always, everything is not going to always be that happy moment. There's going to be hard conversations that need to be held
Yes.
sometime. But I would just say to anyone, especially as you research your family history, keep that open mind. That's why genealogy is important. Now, on the flip side of that, let's go back to business and something that you and I know that we are dealing with right now. We are the heirs of property that was purchased by my second great grandmother and maybe your third or fourth great grandmother. Um, and just because we ignore it, it doesn't mean that it goes away. It just means that we're delaying the process, and each generation that delayed the process of settling up this land is only going to get worse, and that it also can be put in a situation where it can be taken a loss further down the generations as we are removed. Why? Because the younger people only identify with the branch that they come from. They don't identify with the
The
outside
root
first
of the
cousins.
tree. The root of the tree.
The root of the tree, exactly. It's the now it used to be the branches. Karen, I feel like we're down to twigs that people are only identifying with the twig. And if you look at the twig, it will fall off and disintegrate on the ground. You'll never see it. But if you nurture the root, which that's what our program is about, nurturing the root and every branch. Um, and it's so important that we do that because, as I said, I know that my family was enslaved on my mother and my father's side. And reparations to me is to be able to collect as much information as I possibly can about my ancestors, as far possible, as far as I can go. I really want to know.
Yes, and that's one of the things with the whole Georgetown project, and I say Jesuit enslavement more than I say Georgetown, is because when we first heard about this history, it was all about Georgetown. But the more we dig, we're talking about the Catholic Church now, and the Catholic Church owes it to us to find a way to give us all the information that is available because Catholicism in this country owes a big chunk of its existence to enslaved labor.
Karen, let me just say this. You and I both know that this country would not be what it is today if it had not been for our ancestors. And I can't even begin to imagine, Karen, what they went through. I can talk about what I have seen in movies, what I've read, but to actually to actually Im- imagine your own ancestors going through that is difficult. It's really difficult. And for the religious organizations who come in the name of Christianity to enslave our ancestors, break up the families, it's just, yes, they owe.
And they
Let me
still holding on to the records.
yes, yes.
It's
And
one.
they are not the only ones. They are
No.
not the only ones because I have been in attics. I know that records are in the attic. We know that some people have even destroyed records. So I would say to anyone, research your family history. When you're in the clerk's office, make sure that you get it certified, pay the extra money, because somewhere down the line you may need that record, and they will not accept a copy. You need to have it wet. It can be recognized as an official document of the court or
And
that
so
county or that parish.
you're talking about being in the court. Of course, we know there are many, many records that are in the courts. I mentioned newspapers.com earlier. We've talked about cemeteries, and I want people to understand cemeteries are that's a great place to research. I recently went to Baton Rouge because I wanted to go to a particular cemetery that I saw on someone's death certificate, and so there are many places that we can find our ancestors' records.
Did you
And
find the grave you was looking for?
I found the grave that I was looking for. Not only did I find that grave, I found an entire group of graves who are the ancestors of the descendants that many of my family members are seeing pop up in their DNA.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, so is this person my ancestor? Because I'm related to several of this man's daughters.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to go and put my eyes on that cemetery because I wanted to see who else was buried in that cemetery. And that sometimes you can find that online and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you actually have to go to the cemetery.
And you should want to go to the place.
Hmm.
um and if I could find everything online, it doesn't take the place of walking on the places that my ancestors lived, going to those areas and talking to other family members, and I'm finding that we're all interconnected some kind of way. Just recently I went to a church called Sheraton AME Church, where some of my family members on the Dudley side, which is my grandmother's line, and I found that there was some Harrells buried at Sheraton AME Church. And you always hear people say there's two different sets of that surname. There's two different sets. There's two different sets. Well, I saw Harrell Road, and I said when I found the graves with the surname Harrell, and I went up the road a little bit, and then I found the street Harrell. I said, I know there's a connection right here. And this lady just happened to call me from a picture that I post. And let me tell you all something. It's very important that if you think posting your research or posting a photograph will not get the attention, I'm meeting more people through my blogs, through the photographs that I share. And these people are sharing information with me. And so she was able to tell me who that person was. And I remember that Harrell and my uncle was best friends.
Mm,
And they always said that we was related. And so back to the DNA again. So we have to get more family members to take the DNA test. When I find someone like that, look, let's take the DNA test to see if we're related.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, when I you asked about me, did I find what I was looking for in that cemetery? Once I got there and saw all those names, I went when I got back to my hotel room. I started doing a little more research, and so it turns out that and one of the ancestors who was in the tree owned 87 acres of land.
Hmm.
And on the
Hmm.
census record, it mentioned the area. Well, one I got at the Google map. I checked Google Maps for the name of that area. I believe that cemetery was on a part of his 87 acres of land
Hmm. Hmm.
because it ran right up against that street. in Baton Rouge.
And see, that's what I really admire about Bernice's book, the Black Homesteaders of the South, because, she have really, from her own ancestors' experience buying land, she has educated so many people about the Homesteaders Act. We need to find out those 2 nickels or pennies that our ancestors had, what did they do with it? They wanted to buy land, they wanted their freedom. But I feel that we're not doing what we need to do in being good keepers of the property. And that's because we're not dealing with the legal technicalities of what we should be doing. And let me tell you something now. As a genealogist, I can assure you, due to the successions that I have opened, I have saved some families, including my own, thousands of dollars because I already had the genealogy put together, the heirs put together, the death certificates already, funeral programs already. And so that saved a lot of what the attorneys would have done or the paralegals.
Well, I did find a succession record where this man left to each of his three daughters 25 acres of land. And that is a very busy intersection. So I wonder if subsequent generations sold that land or did they lose that land.
Yeah.
But
Trace it all the way back. Yeah,
it's
trace
clear
it.
that civilization built up around this cemetery, which is literally on a corner of a busy
Hmm.
intersection. Nothing
Hmm.
else is there but businesses.
Right. Okay. So there's a question coming out the chat room, Cherokee Bella. Would you ladies know anything about tracing our native history as well? Most of us have 3 bloodlines in us based on our own records and many others. Now, I do not specialize in the native research, but Angela Walte, she does. So what I would suggest, if you would send an email and you can forward this email to Angela, or we'll get that, and because she would be able to help you. I have found some, but nothing that really made me dive deeper into the Native American history. What about you? Any experience for you, Karen?
I've only seen some in DNA, but and knowing that family stories, but I have not been able to identify those specific Native American ancestors. Although the older people in my family who I've gotten to do the DNA test, the Native American does show up at a 1% or 2% level. So that's
Hmm.
telling you that it goes way, 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 way back. Uh,
Hmm.
but I know Angela Walton Rajesh, she definitely specializes in that. And she may be able to help
Yeah,
people
she would be the best
research.
person to ask because and I'm happy to hear that she will be having a new book coming out. And I just want to say that as we research our family history, I can't say it enough. We know in the state of Louisiana, we have witnessed more tornadoes.
Hmm.
Matter of fact, the last tornado last week was 3 miles from my house. And I often think about carrying my files, my files, my files. Now, I do want to mention that in every blog that you see me post on Nurturing Our Roots, um, I always use photographs. There's a reason that I do that because that's one sure way of making sure that if anything happened, not all will be lost. Now,
Hmm.
on a scale from 100, on the 100%, from a scale from 0 to 100%, of course I would like to preserve 100%. But if something happened that is beyond my control, would I take 20%? Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
because that's better than not having anything at all.
Absolutely.
you know all right, good. We see we have a connection going on in the chat room, but once again, we just want to say to you, and I do want to say this: make sure that you keep your receipts when you're researching, for many reasons. If you decide to write a book, you have to travel, whether that be by car, plane, train, whatever. Hotel receipts, receipts that you would have to pay for records at the courthouse. I would certainly say keep a file. Now, not just keeping a file on the business side of it, but for each branch that you are researching, make sure you keep very good records. That's very important. I don't know about you, Karen, but I find that jotting something down on a piece of paper, something like that, and you come back a month later and ask yourself, what was this for? You know, so be very organized, do your homework, talk to the oldest person in the family, ask that family member if they have any oral histories that they would like to, share with you. Definitely write down the names and the spellings of those names, the location where your ancestors lived, occupations, and the communities in which they live in.
Absolutely. Every little bit of information is important. You would be surprised how one little tidbit actually was the key to breaking through to another generation of ancestors.
Yes, and the benefits. I just want to say to you, the benefits, the greatest benefit that I have is just knowing. See, I know. And the second is to share it with the family. Karen, that's how you and I met, you know, and to say that my grandfather and your great grandfather was brothers, you know, and that's how we met. And so, and I'm meeting new cousins all the time, and I know you are too. But the most important thing is, I feel that I am doing what our ancestors would have warned us to do is find each other, connect to each other, you know, uh, empower each other, support each other. Those are the healthy benefits of genealogy for me.
And unless we do things differently, it's going to get harder, not easier. Because families, like back in the day, especially here in New Orleans, most families live intergenerationally. Uh, you almost always knew your first cousins for sure. But now, especially because of Katrina and just it's too expensive to live in New Orleans, uh, a lot of people don't even know their first cousins. And maybe they'll meet up with them if they show up at the family reunion. But even at many reunions, it's more about the party and not about understanding how we're related
Right.
to each other.
And discussing business too, because I think every family reunion should be beyond just, eating food and partying. It should be business if there's business that needs to be discussed, such as if we are all heirs to land. Because I feel like, being honest, I can be honest with you and be honest with myself. I am disappointed in the way that this is being handled because, thinking about when Grandma Emma purchased this land in 1896, women's suffrage, women didn't even have rights. But here this woman is, she's buying this land with us in mind. And I don't care what we own and what we bought outside and became independent, we still have an obligation as heirs to take care of that property. I do want to share something with you, Karen. I was talking about blogging and why share blogs, because once again, to give everybody a general idea, this is what I want to share. The blogs. And when I blog, Karen, what I'm doing is keeping a record. You see the photograph there of Mildred Re- Mildred Ciparan doing her work, and I'm talking about in this blog the importance of how she is preserving these records at the St. Helena Parish Clerk's Office. I want to get past those pictures, but documents. Now, some of these documents you can find on Ancestry, but let me point out 443,000 readers, 68, 443,068 readers. That is a lot of readers to be reading about a small place, in the Florida parishes. But all the photographs that you see is because that's my way of preserving these photographs. Should anything happen, uh, everything is not lost. So that's why I like to use the picture. Besides, pictures tell the story.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to this lady house, Miss McCoy. I spent a lot of time in Miss McCoy's house with her, Karen, and I know what she had in her home. Her home burned down,
Mm, mm,
and
mm.
those records are lost. So that's why it's important that we look at, blogging, look at ways of sharing, you know, and sometimes it doesn't have to be 2 or 3 paragraphs if you find that you want to start blogging about your family history. And matter of fact, on that note, Alvin Blakes will be one of the guests on a special edition of Nurture Our Roots to talk about why blog. Why do he feel that he wants to disseminate this information so freely with everyone? Let's hear what he has to say about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like I said, blogs does not have to be long. It can be very short. If it's a photograph, the name, the location, and if you know anything about that person, share that information. It's a little bit. And you'll be surprised that, hey, look, okay, something did happen, but I do know that I blogged about it and I used those photographs. And you can also attach videos. You can do that in Ancestry, and Family Search give you the option to also use videos as well, right?
Uh,
Have you ever done that, Karen?
I have not done that on Family Search because I just have a kind of a basic tree on Family Search. My
Okay.
more detailed tree is on Ancestry. But and then some of the software programs, which I also encourage people to use, in addition to having your tree online, have it in one of the software programs, and you can sync the that I know Family Tree Maker. You can sync it with Family Search and with Ancestry,
Yes, yes.
and that way your information is kept updated. And but it's that's a good backup system to have for your family tree that you've taken the time to build.
Yes, yes. We're getting a comment in the post in the chat. You're doing an amazing job. Your information is so valuable to our existence. Keep up the good work, ladies. And that's thank you, Sharon. We just want to share information that can be helpful to any family or individual who are researching their family history. But we also want to talk about the business side of that because there's always a business side. There's
And
always a
there's
business
one
side.
other piece of information I think nobody thinks about.
And what would that be?
Voter rolls. Our
Yes.
people actually voted in the 1800s, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see copies of their voter registration cards online.
And
Voter
where did and tell the people, how did you find that online?
I found it on I think it was on ancestry.com.
Mhm.
On
Mhm.
when you're searching for records for when you're researching your family tree, I came across apparently St. Tammany Parish that was must have been a voter registration site. There's a listing with lots of people, but then there are individual voter registration cards from the 1800s. I was shocked because what we taught that we didn't get the right to vote to 1960 1964. But
Well,
I
no, in during the Reconstruction, because I was just in Ponchatoula yesterday, and Mr. Eddie Pons, the founder and editor of the Drum newspaper, we was there trying to work with the mayor and the city council there to look at putting a historical marker on Reverend Arthur Tasker's in the area of Ponchatoula. Well, he was the only black mayor of Ponchatoula, and he was appointed in 1873. So what we need to have these discussions more that when slavery was abolished, now Reverend Arthur Tasker was a former slave, but we need to talk about what was our ancestors doing
That's right.
when slavery was emancipated. You know, we're talking about people who had skills, people who had a lot of wisdom, and although some of them may not have known how to read and write, and then some of them did, you know,
Yeah,
but
some
the
of
point
them became movers
is,
and shakers.
yes, movers and shakers. And so and so we look at and study history. It is the past that shapes the present, and the present that shapes the future. So we're going back into the past and looking at all these contributions that our ancestors made, not only to our families, but to the communities.
Absolutely. Sometimes people say, well, I can't find any records because my ancestors were enslaved. And you would just be surprised the amount of records that are out there with your ancestors' names on them. Names, locations, a date and time. Uh, that's all it takes to be your ancestor record. There are records out there pre 1870 with ancestors' names on them. You just got to dig. You got to go and dig for them. They're out there.
I think that we need to stop telling ourselves that genealogy is a hobby and change the narratives on that. It is a necessity. It is who you are. It is everything about you, your father's side of the history and your mother's side of the history. We need to know. You should want to know, and we just have to do just really be on a mission to get people to want to be engaged in genealogy research and first find those reasons. So I hope that during this segment of our program tonight, our discussion, we have somehow laid a blueprint to getting started as to why you should get started.
Absolutely. And if you put it down, pick it back up again.
Because that will happen.
Yes, yes.
Exactly. That
Sometimes it
will
gets too
happen.
heavy.
hmm It is heavy. We must say that.
Mhm.
And sometimes, people like ourselves in our last 2 minutes, we talk about genealogy so much, sometimes the family get tired of hearing it. But you can always find someone that will listen to what you have to say. And if you have someone that's older in the family, in their 80s, their 90s, their 70s, 60s, whatever it is, talk to that family member. you know, Talk to them, write it down. I would suggest record it
Mm.
because it's very important. It's all about you. That's what genealogy is. It's all about you. It's all about your family, and your family is history. Genealogy is history. And so it took a long time, but we got people to look at local history, and local history begins with you. So, Karen, you want to close us out? Let me just go to our closing. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We look forward to some special editions coming up, and we will keep you informed. Anything else you want to add, Karen?
I will only add just stick to it. And if please follow us on social media on our YouTube channel, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification button so that you'll be notified the next time we come on air.
And please share,
Share, share.
because we want new people to come in and learn what we're talking about. Let's